I'm Justin Silverman of the New England First Amendment Coalition. Welcome to Web Scraping 102. The first class, Web Scraping 101, can be viewed at nefac.org/30minute skills or right here on this YouTube channel. Before we begin today's lesson, please make sure you have downloaded Tabula and created an If This, Then That account. Links to both can be found in the video summary, and they're both required for today's class. We have a lot to cover and not a lot of time, so let's get started. Here's today's instructor, Maggie Mulvihill. Maggie, all yours.
Hi, everybody. So in Web Scraping 101, we had that in July, and we learned about importing data in from Google Sheets. Today, we're going to learn some other skills, extracting data using something called Tabula, a free tool called Tabula, and also how to pull data out of the web using If This, Then That. Just a little bit about me. I teach data journalism at Boston University. I'm a lawyer. I teach media law and ethics. I'm on the board of the New England First Amendment Coalition, and I'm very passionate about open government, which is one of the reasons that I learned how to scrape and extract data, because we can't always get what we need from the government when we need it. So just quickly to remind you, I hope if you haven't seen the webinar for the July session that we had, we scraped with Google Sheets, really easy to do. And the session is recorded. So if that's a skill that you want to learn, please go ahead and watch that. We scraped Olympic data, and we also scraped some data from Craigslist. We scraped tables and lists. And I just wanted to show you why scraping or extracting data is so valuable. These are some stories my students did last semester that were published in the Globe and the AP and other places. It was a national project that we did with the Howard Center for Investigative Journalism, in which we scraped eviction data from courts across the country to see how the moratoriums on evictions were working, if people were getting evicted in mass numbers. And we would not have been able to do the story if we didn't have scraping skills. So it really, really was helpful. And we got some very good clips for our students. So it's definitely worth taking the time to learn. What we're going to do today is we're going to extract data from PDFs to start. And we hope, as journalists, and I know not everybody here is a journalist, that we get data in a format that's easy to use and we can just hit the download button. But that's not always the case. In fact, the government, I've encountered situations where government has said to us when we've requested records that they think we might manipulate the data. And so they lock it up in a PDF, and that is problematic for us because we can't do analysis on it. So this is a Massachusetts website, it's a comptroller's website, and you can see that the MBTA payroll is here in a PDF, and we obviously can't do analysis on it in a PDF, so we need to get it out of there. We call this liberating data. And that's where a tool like Tabula can really come in handy, which I believe was actually created by some journalists. So hopefully you have downloaded the software and opened it. It works on any kind of machine, but it does only work on text-based PDFs, not on scanned images. So you have to make sure that if you're working with a government report and there's a table of data locked in that report that you need, just make sure that that's a text-based file. And there is a slide here sort of showing the difference between when an image is scanned in versus a text-based file. And it runs on the command line when you first open Tabula. And what I do, which I think is a lot easier, is just pin Tabula to my favorites or my taskbar. These are all kinds of different tables that I have scraped out of government reports. But if you can see that arrow, it shows, that I just pin Tabula up there, so I don't have to keep going and looking for it. You can scrape multiple tables out of a PDF, or you could just save the pages that have the tables you want and just, extract those pages. This is a page from a Vermont government website that I actually gave you. I gave you some homework, some practice homework, and this is a PDF from Vermont that you can try to practice extracting. So let's go ahead and find some data online. I want everybody to go to the web and put in these search terms. And I apologize, there's a spelling error in that search bar, but I want you to look for Massachusetts opioid overdoses by city or town. So go ahead and do that web search. And you should get this first link, which is a PDF from Massachusetts government website. It's pretty recent, November of 2020, and it's going to contain tables that we want to work with. So if you got that link, go ahead and save that to your computer. And you can see that we can't do a lot with this data when it's trapped like this. So we'll go ahead and extract it. So I want you then to open Tabula, and you're going to click on Browse. And I do it here for you in a second to find your file. And then you're going to click on Import, and Tabula will start bringing that in. So here's an example of how that works. You've saved the file to your desktop or wherever you saved it to. So when you open Tabula, you click Browse, you find your file, it shows up, and then you click Import, and it will start bringing the data in, or the PDF in, and creating these thumbnails of all the different tables. I'm just gonna do it one more time so you guys can see. Open Tabula, browse, find your file, and import it in. So now we can extract the tables that we need. We might want to do some analysis on, whether deaths are going up or down, what counties, what cities, what states, what cities, what towns. So go ahead and click on Auto Detect Tables. If you see that in Tabula, it's right here. And the software will start going through and highlighting data that it recognizes as a table. It'll put a red border around it. It's pretty accurate. This is not a huge PDF, so it's not too problematic, but it will shade in pink what it recognizes as a table of data. Now you can click on Preview and export the extracted data. And I do it here. And click on Preview and export the extracted data. And it should pull the data in some sort of a spreadsheet. And then you can export it out so you can analyze it or visualize it. So your screen should look like this. And I'm going to export my data into a comma separated file. So I'm going to choose CSV, but there's lots of other options here. So you just choose how you want it to be exported and click the export button. And then it should spit it out into a spreadsheet that you can then open and clean up. Maybe you want to get rid of certain rows or columns, or you want to put this into another program for visualization. So we're going to try it again. All right, let's try this again. Normally, you'll have a PDF with some data in it that you already need to extract. I'm just showing you, ways that you can go out and find data. I'd always check the file type to see if it's in Excel or some sort of spreadsheet or CSV format. But if it's not, this is a handy tool to get it out and liberate it. So go ahead and search the web for racial disparity data in Massachusetts. And while you're doing that, just one thing to note, after you do your export, if you want to go back to sort of the home page, you just click on the tabula icon, and that should bring you right back to where you started so you can do it again. I just want to make a couple of comments about searching for data, and this is really for the younger journalists maybe who didn't get this training, but obviously the narrower your search, the better your result. So you want to restrict your search to time, because generally we want the freshest data. You may want historical data. And try to restrict your searches to certain file types like PDF, XLS, PowerPoints. Lots of interesting government information is in PowerPoints. And domains. I mean, we generally work with government data. So maine.gov, vermont.gov. But the narrower your search, the better the quality of your information. So if you did that search, racial disparity data, file type PDF Massachusetts, I'm not sure I told you to do the file type, but you should, even without that, get this link, which is really, really valuable data on racial disparities in the Massachusetts criminal justice system. It was a report that was done by Harvard Law School, and it's a large report. It's 103 pages, and it has multiple tables in it. So go ahead and save that link somewhere because we're going to pull it in. And let's repeat what we did earlier. If you save that file to your computer, when you open Tabula, you can then just browse and find it. Click on it and open it up and then import it. And it may take a few minutes because it's a larger file. So just be patient. Tabula is a bit temperamental. You may have to refresh it periodically. And you also, if you're using the auto detect tables function, you need to make sure that that is highlighted so that it is going to recognize the tables. If it's grayed out, it's not going to work. So just a word of warning there. So this is now pulling in that report, the 103-page report, generating these page thumbnails. We're practicing some patience here, which is tough to do on deadline. Okay, so you have your thumbnails, and now you can see on this slide, the auto detect tables is running. I haven't selected it yet, but do you see how it's highlighted now? It was actually running as part of the import, and now it's highlighted. So we can click on it again and it will go through and recognize all the different tables. And it, like I said earlier, it's pretty accurate. And they should be bordered in red and highlighted in pink. Just make sure that that auto detect tables is not grayed out. And you may not want all of these tables. But once it's done the auto detect function, then you can go ahead and preview the exported data, which I do here. So Tabula's gone in, it's found the tables. I think I did have to hit refresh. It's identified them. And then I was able to go in and preview and export the data. So you should get, if you did it correctly, a spreadsheet that looks like this with all the different tables in it. And again, you may not want all of them. You may just want a couple of tables. If you don't want them, you can hit revise selection and go back to your thumbnails, and you can X out of ones that you don't want. That's another option. And then you can do some analysis once you have it in a spreadsheet format. You know, once you've previewed and extracted the data and then exported it, you can either clean it up in your spreadsheet or you can revise your selection and get rid of pages that you don't want. This is not the only PDF extractor that journalists use. I happen to really like it and use it for my students because it's free and it was developed for journalists, and because it can extract multiple pages of information, multiple tables. Some of the other options here, Adobe obviously is really, really good, but it's expensive. PDFzilla can extract stuff that's in multiple languages. Most of the PDF extractors we use only work with data that's in English. Comet Docs is another option. If you're a member of Investigative Reporters and Editors, you'll get a free account with Comet Docs. I find that's better with just a single table. I just prefer Tabula. And then this small PDF is another option, but I don't think that's free. And one other resource to know about is, and this is not limited to PDFs, but this is a fellow in New York who really wants to work with journalists, and he has created a great tool called Table Capture that will get data out of the web or PDFs. So you might want to check it out. And I believe it's free. So I gave you a little bit of homework. We're going to move on to if this, then that. You know, if either you have a government report with a table that's trapped in it, or a state audit, or, you know, some sort of document, or if you just want to practice, here's a couple of PDFs from Vermont, Connecticut, the U.S. Department of Justice, if you want to go ahead and practice. All right, so moving right along, another good tool for liberating data for stories is if this, then that. And this, you can do a lot with this. I use it to stay on top of certain beats or certain issues I'm covering, but people use it for all kinds of personal reasons. It's just a really cool tool. And you can get a free account. I have a pro account. But what it does is create these applets so you can monitor information on your beat. I mean, that's one way a journalist would use it, and I'm going to show you some examples. But my students love it. And it has so many offerings for ways you can identify data and bring it into a certain format that you want to use. So one thing, for example, it can do is if you want to stay on top of breaking news, you can set up a trigger. Anybody who tweets something from a certain geographical location, you could set your applet up so you get all of those tweets and they're basically dumped into something that you use. So a Google Sheet, Dropbox, Google Drive. And so this is a sort of tool that would be really useful on breaking news, like the Boston Marathon bombing. You wanted to get everybody tweeting from a certain location. Or you could get alerts from government agencies. This was a trigger I set up for a story we were doing on food safety. Every time the CDC had news about some food safety issue, I created a task in my to-do list to make sure that I went back and looked at that and taught my students or assigned my students to research that particular piece of news for this project we were doing on food safety. So you can see up here, it created a task and teaching in Todoist. Or you could create triggers for press releases from a government agency like the SEC. So let's create an IFTT for the Boston Police. It's very easy. You get on IFTT and hit create. And it will say if this. So click add. And you're going to choose a service that you want to use. We're going to use Twitter. And there's lots of different options, but I want to get all tweets from a specific user, the Boston Police. So click on that option. You need their Twitter handle, obviously. So you'll put that username in the search box, the username to watch, and click on create trigger, sorry. And then it's the software is asking you, what do you want to do with that trigger? Well, I want to add that trigger to something. So click add and choose where you want that information to go. In my case, I wanted it to go into Google Sheets. So I searched Google Sheets, clicked on it. And now every time the Boston Police tweets something, a row will be added to a spreadsheet in Google Sheets. And it will create a new one if you don't have one. And I do have some demos here since we're running out of time, so you can see how I did it. It's going to ask you to name your sheet. So you put your username in and click add ingredient. And then it will show you how the Google Sheet will be formatted. And then you click on create action. Continue. And finish. So what it's done is every time the Boston Police tweets something, that information is a new row in a Google spreadsheet for me. So I'll just show you when I first created this in 2018, I just had 3 tweets. And now I have thousands and thousands. And it's a repository of information that you can search. You know, what is your agency tweeting about? I write for the Boston Globe about the federal corruption overtime investigation. And I searched overtime in my 2021 tweets, no mention of it. Domestic violence, Melnia Cass, which is an area of Boston where there's a lot of drug problems. You know, what are they saying or what aren't they saying? And is that changing over time? And are they just tweeting, very praiseworthy things about themselves? So I've given you some homework here to practice. I know that was a really quick drive through of if this, then that, but go ahead and try to create some triggers. And I gave you 2 things to do here. So we don't have time to go into why you should learn these skills, but there are some slides here about why this is really, really valuable knowledge and skills to have. And if you have any questions, please get in touch with me at BU. And this is being recorded, so you can go back and watch it and try to follow along if we went a little too quickly. Thank you so much for everything. And I hope to hear from some of you.
Thank you all again for joining us today. Please remember to visit nefac.org/30-minute skills to view all our lessons and register for upcoming ones. We also welcome feedback. What types of classes would you like to see in the future? How can we best help you in your respective newsrooms? Please email me directly at justin@nefac.org with all of your suggestions. Thanks for viewing this lesson, and we'll see you next month for our next 30-minute skills class.